we are going to be talking about the very popular 2000s movie Mean Girls. Mean Girls is a cult classic. It was released on April 30th, 2004, bringing in a total of $130 million US dollars into the box office. Everywhere you go, you're probably going to hear or see a quote, whether it be on shirts, in the hallway at school. But today we're here to answer the question of why is it so good? Why now, almost 15 years later after its release date, is it still relevant?
We've kind of broken it down into 3 sections of why we think this movie did so well and is still so relevant. And so our first one we're going to talk about is how it kind of just captures early 2000 culture. That's part of why it's so good.
The first thing that really catches our attention is the construction of social hierarchy in the movie. There's 3 main characters, Gretchen, Regina, and Karen Smith, also known as the Plastics, the iconic trio, and they are at the top of the school, and Regina is their ringleader, and they're everything that society's expectations for popular then is made out to be. They're pretty, they have a lot of friends, they're rich, and that is kind of what classifies them as queen bees of the school.
And so in those characters, we can kind of see a lot of 2000 culture staples. So they wear a lot of low-rise jeans, mini skirts, body glitter, juicy couture, Uggs, and they have the latest technology. So they have flip phones and the coolest cars. And so you can just kind of see 2000s culture is really encapsulated with those characters. And then also, Lindsay Lohan was a super trendy actor in the early 2000s. She was in Mean Girls, Freaky Friday, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, and she was just kind of the it girl. She was super popular, and all the directors kind of wanted her for their movies.
And her character, as a new student who used to be homeschooled in Africa, it's a big culture shock when she arrives to North Shore High. Cliques weren't very prominent as a homeschool student, clearly. So this new social construct that she is shoved into is very at first hard for her to grasp, which I think is definitely the case for a lot of in the 2000s. Cliques were a big thing, and for any new student, that's definitely a tough position to be in. So I think the directors and writers definitely did a good job capturing that social hierarchy, cliqueness. Okay, So now we're moving on to the script.
Yes. Alright, so our second part of why we thought the movie was so good and why it's still so relevant, we just thought the script was really strong. And part of why that is because it's actually based on a book called Queen Bees and Wannabes, which is a nonfiction parental guidance book for helping teens with friendship. And it's very factual and scientific. And so Tina Fey wrote the script based on this book. And I think that's what makes it so relatable and factual, the movie, because it's based on a nonfiction book and it actually draws on science and the whole social hierarchy idea and how girls behave and stuff like that. And so the movie just gets a lot of those things right, which is why it's still so relevant today, I guess.
Yeah, I think that going based off of that book adds a lot of authenticity to the movie, because for teen girls, in any era, friendship is definitely can be difficult for a lot. So they definitely do a good job capturing that. And to add on to the authenticity, in the movie, there's a lot of math scenes. There's the persuasion of trying to get Katie to join the math club, her joining the math club but skipping the meetings, and then her in math class, her at the math competition, and they did a good job of making that authentic. Tina Fey, she didn't necessarily understand math, dialogue or terminology. So in order to help her craft those lines for the scripts, she actually took the lesson plan from her friend's boyfriend, because he was a high school calculus teacher, and she used those to help create the lines for the math scene. So it definitely makes it authentic.
I think, Tina Fey just did such a great job of making everything really realistic, with the math thing, with it being based on a book. and it's also funny. It's also like a comedy movie first and foremost, and that's when you get those kind of like iconic quotes that we still have today.
And many of these quotes are even still, you hear people saying them 10 years later. The girl who plays Gretchen Wieners, Lacey Chabert, she still gets people saying,
"That is so fetch."
it definitely impacted 2000 slang, and we still hear it today sometimes as well. Along with having the perfect script, you need the perfect actors to deliver those lines, and we believe that they did a great job with the cast. So we have Rachel McAdams, who plays Regina George, the Queen Bee, and she was originally rejected from the role because they believe she didn't look 16. So when she was rejected from the role, she auditioned for Katie Heron, but the directors didn't see her fit there, so she was then casted as Regina George. And I think that she was a great choice because she definitely met society's expectations for the popular girl. She's a pretty girl who has a lot of money, a lot of friends, which just makes her even more intimidating, condescending in the aspect of people loving her and hating her. Gives her the ability to play a two-faced kind of persona. So I think that they did a good job casting Rachel McAdams for that.
Our next kind of big actress that we talked about was Lindsay Lohan, who played Katie Heron, and she's kind of the opposite of Regina George in the movie. She played very relatable on screen, which was kind of why she got the role in Mean Girls, because a lot of teen girls could kind of look at her and say, hey, like, I'm kind of like Katie, like, I don't really fit in, like, I don't like high school, and they could just kind of identify with her. She's just, like, such a relatable character, and she doesn't fit in, and she's not cool, and she's not popular, and that's just kind of the essence of her character, and she played it really well.
And now we have Amanda Seyfried, who plays Karen Smith, and she also originally auditioned for Regina George, and the directors did like her, but she had a different approach. A quote from the director is, Seyfried tested for Regina and was kind of brilliant and very different from Rachel's approach. She played it in a much more ethereal but still kind of scary way. She was more frightening but oddly less intimidating. So I think the intimidation factor plays a really big part in that movie, because everyone is so scared of Regina George that they have to act like they like her. Like, from seeing Karen Smith's mannerisms and voice patterns, that she's much better suited as the dumb blonde. She does a good job of personifying, like, an airhead.
Yep. And then we had some honorable mentions, but we didn't really go into depth with them. Lacey Chabert played Gretchen Wieners, which was the third plastic. The one whose hair was filled with secrets, as they say.
That's why her hair is so big, it's full of secrets.
And then Jonathan Bennett played Aaron Samuels, who's kind of Katie's, like, crush in the movie, like, the heartthrob in her math class.
Regina's ex.
Exactly. And then Daniel Franzese, who was Damien. Katie's, like, kind of best friend who just kind of shows her around the school.
And then we have Lizzie Kaplan, who plays Janice Ian, who's, like, the emo girl who at first befriends Katie, and her and Damien are good friends. And she used to be best friends with Regina, but then things went downhill, so we kind of see, like, the downfall of Katie and Janice's friendship. She did a good job portraying that.
So basically we just think these three things kind of just made the movie work so well and made it what it is today, and, like, still so quotable and everything. The time period, the script, and just the actors and how they played their role. And it also just provided an accurate depiction of early 2000s culture, not only through the clothes and technology in the movie, but also through how it showed a social hierarchy and, like, the different cliques, which were all very prominent ideas in the early 2000s.
It does a great job capturing stereotypes, and most importantly, it's probably still very popular and present today because of its timeless humor and quotable lines. You still hear them today, and you'll probably still hear them for another 10 to 20 years. So that is our take on the movie Mean Girls. Hi, this is Colleen Daly.
And Megan Hirsch.
And welcome back to Beyond the Screen.
Today we're interviewing Ty Burr, who is a film critic and columnist at the Boston Globe.
And he's going to be telling us about the process of him reviewing films and what makes a good or bad film. So let's jump into it.
My name is Ty Burr. I am a film critic at the Boston Globe. I write 3 to 4 movie reviews a week, plus a Sunday cultural column.
So our first question is, where'd you grow up and where'd you go to college?
I grew up actually in Brookline, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. Went to college at Dartmouth up in New Hampshire, where I was a film studies major as part of the theater program. But I also did a transfer year at NYU in their cinema studies department.
Our next question is, how did you get into the business of reviewing films, and were you always interested in movies?
Second part first. I got into movies when I was maybe a little younger than you. I remember I was 14, and my mom told me to stay up and watch this old black and white movie starring the Marx Brothers. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're a comedy team from the 30s that had been my dad's favorite comedy team, and my dad had died when I was young. She said, you should stay up and watch it and have a connection. And I'd never watched an old movie before, and I just totally flipped for it. And around the same time, somebody gave me as a Christmas present a book of, like the 50 greatest old movies. So I got hooked. So I was reading a lot of stuff and watching all these old movies and thinking about all this stuff and wanting to write myself. So as early as college, I was writing film reviews and film notes for the Film Society. Then when I graduated, I went to New York, did a bunch of things, but eventually worked my way into writing for Entertainment Weekly. I don't know if you know that magazine. I was writing there pretty much from the first issue and did that for 11 years and then came to the Boston Globe.
What are some things you look for when watching a movie?
It's a good question because, I have to watch all different kinds of movies and I have to be open to all different kinds of movies. And one of the things I always tell myself is I kind of want to let the movie be the best movie it's trying to be. I spend like the first 15 minutes trying to figure out, okay, what is this movie doing? What does it want to be? Where's it trying to take me? Half of my brain is just watching it and letting it happen. And the other half of my brain is, well, literally taking notes, but also just kind of noticing. And trying to figure out if, okay, are you living up to the the bar that you set for yourself? And then I have to sit down and basically write a 800 to 1,000 words on every movie I watch. So it's like having to write a school paper for every movie you watch.
We were wondering, what element of movies do you think kind of contributes the most to its success? So is it more like shot composition or like the acting or like the script?
Every movie is different. One thing that you become attuned to when you do what I do, or if you're just paying attention to movies, you start becoming aware of all the different jobs that get done. The soundtrack, the lighting, the sound design, the production design, the costumes, all these things. You keep it in the back of your head. It all starts with the screenplay. You can't make a good movie without a good screenplay. You can make a bad movie with a good screenplay. You can ruin the screenplay, but you can't make a good movie without a good screenplay. So I would say the script, and then the direction obviously matters.
Was there ever like just one movie that you watched that kind of just set like a baseline of expectations or standards for when you watch a movie?
One of them is a movie that everybody has heard of, and one of them is a movie that nobody's heard of. But they're both true. I love them both. They both do different things. And the one that everybody has heard of is The Godfather. And the other movie that nobody's heard of is a really weird French movie called Celine and Julie Go Boating. There's nothing like it. It kind of blows every idea of what you think a movie is supposed to be like. Seeing that movie in college made me realize that a movie can be anything. So to answer that question, the roundabout, my baseline going into a movie is surprise me, show me something I haven't seen before.
Would you say reviews mainly stem from like the plots of movies or more of the technical components?
I always think of a movie review as subjective opinion wrapped in a tortilla shell of objective context. And that context is anything the reader needs to know to sort of like understand where this movie's coming from. And some of that's the plot. And some of that is, if you need to know what the director did before, or if the actor in it is, actors are in it are important in one way or another, Are the performances? So you're addressing different things. If the movie is about something in the real world that is based on a true story, you have to keep that in mind. Um, I don't want to bore the reader with too much technical detail, but I will say, I will talk about the shot language if that's germane. I'll talk about the soundtrack. I will talk about the elements. Um, and sometimes I'll break down a scene if I think will help them understand what the movie is trying to do. Talking about plot is a tricky thing. I have some readers who think I give away too much plot. Um, I have readers who think I don't give enough away. I have readers who say, I don't read your reviews until after I've seen the movie. I mean, I'll read the first paragraph of your review, but then go see the movie and then come back because they want to know what more to think about. Um, and that's fine. You can use my reviews any way you want. In other words, it's kind of a juggling act. I don't, if you read any of my reviews, you'll see I spend a bit of time talking about plot, um, and I try not to give away anything in the last third. You can allude to it, um, and there's a real kind of weird spoiler culture going on, especially among Star Wars fans and film bros, as I call them. Who just don't, well, don't read the review if you don't want to know anything about the movie. Um, so, but it's a balancing act. Is the way to answer the question.
How do you differentiate between a rotten or a fresh movie? So I guess this one pertains to like Rotten Tomatoes and your work on there.
I don't like Rotten Tomatoes, and I'll tell you why. Um, because it basically reduces every review down to a binary, good, bad. If I give a movie 2.5 stars, which to me is just above average, that's a fresh tomato. That means it's good. And if you get 100% of those, that means it's as good as well, Paddington 2. Rotten Tomatoes just basically measures how many good reviews versus how many bad reviews. Yeah, well, so I work on a scale of 1 to 4 stars with half stars. So what makes a 2.5 star movie different from a 3 star movie? Um, and I all I can tell you is that you go by your gut. Um, it really is a gut thing, and I kind of sometimes wish I could use quarter stars because I've seen some movies that are really 2 and 3/4 stars.
Do you think there's a difference between quote unquote good movies and popular movies?
Yes, I do. I think a popular movie doesn't have anything to do with quality. Um, it can. Titanic is a great movie. I think that's a great experience, a great movie. Deserves all its Oscars, deserves all the money it made. Um, but a movie can be popular without necessarily being great or even good. I can point out plenty of box office champs that are not all that great movies. Um, and I can point out, Oscar winning movies that I think are actually pretty terrible. Long story short, there's almost no correlation between quality and popularity.
Our next question is, do you ever find it fun to ridicule a bad film?
It can be, so now I'm thinking about Cats. And my response to that is I actually ended up feeling a little guilty because I had too much fun beating up on that movie. Uh, it's a terrible, terrible movie, but you don't want to I always try to remember that everybody who made a movie has a mother, and that mother is going to read my review. There's no incentive to be gratuitously mean. And the experience I had while watching Cats was like, get me the hell out of here.
Our last and final question is, can you ever just watch a movie for fun anymore?
Yeah, I absolutely watch for pleasure. You can't lose that. Yeah, if you lose that, it's time to do something else.
All right, so that was all our questions.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great, good. Glad to hear I'm going to be in a podcast.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Screen. I'm Colleen Daly.
And I'm Megan.
And today we're going to be talking about the work that an assistant producer does, and more specifically, the work that was done on the production of the movie The Big Lebowski.
While like conducting interviews and like doing research, we learned a lot more about the movie business and what it actually takes to make a movie. And one of the important jobs on a set is an assistant director. Basically, their job is to kind of organize and like schedule everything and just make sure like everyone's in where they need to be and like doing what they need to do and just making life kind of easy for the directors.
Yeah, they also do script breaking down where they'll read the script and make notes and they'll hand off those notes to the directors.
We wanted to kind of get like a first-hand perspective of someone who really knows the movie business and like kind of has been in it for a while. So we interviewed Jeff Rafner, who has been an assistant director and now he's a producer for a bunch of television shows. But he was an assistant director on a bunch of movies, including The Big Lebowski. So we interviewed him because we just kind of wanted to understand the movie business as a whole more and then just kind of get an inside look of how The Big Lebowski was filmed and made.
Back then, I don't think they emailed. I think I would have to get a FedEx package with a script in it. I read the script and I was like, what is this? This is just kind of like a traditional film noir kind of formula, but thrown on its head in a comedy. Basically, I take the script, I look at every scene, I go, uh, Jeffrey Lebowski and Walter are in this scene, and it takes place at this place, and I make a schedule based upon the scenes. And then I group all of the scenes that play together in a place. So all the scenes that play together with certain actors that play at the bowling alley all get grouped together, right? Next step is I work with the directors to figure out how much work you do each day to allow you to be successful in the scheduling of the show.
And Jeff told us a lot of interesting things and how he kind of started in the movie business and worked his way up.
I started at the bottom and worked my way up. I started as a production assistant and worked my way up to, and now I produce television shows. I worked in every position for about 7 years. So I worked as a production assistant for 7 years. Then I got into the Directors Guild and worked as a second second assistant director for about 7 years. Then I moved up to being a key second assistant director. Then I moved up to being a first assistant director, then a production manager, and now a producer. So I'm responsible as a producer for the budgets, the hiring, the firing, the planning of what we do. It's an all encompassing job. I'm often the first one there in the morning and the last one to leave at the end of the evening.
Okay, so The Big Lebowski came out in 1998 and it's a comedy, kind of a drama. It was directed by Ethan Coen and Joel Coen, so the Coen brothers.
So all of the improvisation happened in those rehearsals, right? All the improvisation happened during the rehearsals prior to shooting. So by the time we got there, it was all about Joel and Ethan focusing on performances. And I had never worked with two directors before, but it was such a cool experience. They were kind of such like a well-oiled machine doing this together, that what we would do is we would do take one of a scene with two people in it, and we would cut, and Joel would go to one of the actors and Ethan would go to the other actor, and then we'd do take two and they would give them notes. We would go to do take two, and then after the second take, Ethan would go to the other actor and Joel would go to the other actor and give notes. And then we do a third take, and quite often that third take was perfect because they had the input of both of them, and quite often they didn't talk to each other about the notes that they were giving to the actors.
Popular cast members include Jeff Bridges, who plays the dude, John Goodman playing Walter Sobchak, Julianne Moore, who plays Maud Lebowski, Steve Buscemi, who plays Theodore, and there's David Huddles, who plays the Big Lebowski, and there's also many other famous actors. And the Coen brothers did, in fact, write these characters for these actors. So, just a quick summarization of the movie. It's about Jeff, who
is also known as the dude Lebowski. And there is a millionaire with the same name, and the dude is mistaken for that millionaire. So he seeks restitution for his ruined rug and gets help from his bowling friends to get his restitution. So it's a very interesting plot line, very weird but very funny.
And it's kind of like a cult classic, I would say. It has like a big following and like people watch it like a ton of times.
Little did I know when I got the job that it would be as iconic and successful and have this legendary status that it did.
So there were a lot of things that kind of happened behind the scenes and just during the general production of the movie that kind of just made it what it was. So the main character,
I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
the dude, was actually based on a real person known as Jeff Dowd. And Jeff Dowd was a member of the anti-war group, the Seattle Seven, and actually called himself the Dude. So that was where the Coen brothers kind of. And then Peter Exline, who's a screenwriting consultant and film professor at USC, who's a good friend of the Coen brothers, told the brothers that a bunch of stories from his own life, and those kind of worked their way into the movie. And so, like, an example of that was that he had a rug in his living room that tied the room together, and he once found a child's homework in his car after it had been stolen. So the Coen brothers kind of just drew inspiration from people they knew and like real people, the dude. And so that kind of made the movie what it was and made it so like authentic.
And one day, Jeff Bridges shows up and he's wearing the sweater saying, "Hey, look what I found at the swap meet." And the next week, he comes in with the jellies, the sandals, and says, "Hey, I found these there too. It was so cool." Suddenly, the characters started developing. They started doing rehearsals, reading the script, and adjusting things, and we would get script revisions. And as that all happened, the characters started forming in the script, and the camaraderie started gelling in the script. And the script that I read originally and the script that we shot by the time we got it started were completely different. So there was an evolution. The bones were there in the original script, but the evolution of what it was and the characters took on the life of the script. It was just a real good team effort. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm a big Red Hot Chili Pepper fan, and got to meet Flea. I thought was really cool, and got to meet Amy Mann, that was really cool. Um, let's see. It just was a lot of really memorable experiences. And one of the things about the film industry is each of those experiences build to make you who you are in your career. Do you know what I mean? It is a very big, I get a lot of people in job interviews that want to interview me because I worked on that movie and they want to hear about that movie. But once they hear about all the other things that I've done and all the other movies and everything like that, I feel really lucky to be able to have had and still have this cool career that I have.
Yeah, it definitely still has influence to this day. Some like fun facts that from like after the whole production is like there is a religion, quote unquote religion, that the dude apparently created. So there's an official website, um, and it's you can become a dudist minister. So this is all based off the movie. It's very odd, but there are over 220,000 dudist ministers ordained worldwide, all because of this movie. And there's also a store in New York City that sells memorabilia from the movie, and it's known as the Little Lebowski Shop. So this movie has definitely had a big influence and still has one today.
Right. And I mean, just so you get a reference of size, my last show had close to 400 people working on it. So between people who do construction, people who people who do construction, people who do paint, people who do plaster, people who do wiring of the lights on the sets, all of the things, special effects guys, everything, close to 400 people. But it was an absolutely fantastic experience. Lots and lots of fun. They're very fun to be around.
So after our interview and like our research and all this and just kind of being familiar with the movie, we realized like how much goes into the production of a movie and like how many people it takes and just how much hard work it takes to like put all these little to small parts in, and then they just kind of come together into something more important and more meaningful, and Jeff kind of summarizes that pretty well.
Thanks for listening to our podcast.
It's been fun.